Departure. Way before the sun's golden rays crept into view, Serenity was awake. She had dressed quickly in clothes that she had always considered her training outfits, which was basically men's clothes. She wrapped her hair up in a bun and stared at herself in the mirror.
I guess once I put a helmet on, I'll look just like one of the guys,
she thought as she shrugged. She grabbed her sword and helmet. She put the sword in her back strap and tucked her helmet under her arm. She let out a deep, uncomfortable breath, and then turned to face the sword that she never touched. It hung lonely by itself on a ledge of the wall. She reached her hand out and grasped the sword and held it firmly. The sword felt perfect in both weight and length, even while in its sheath. She gave the sword a dirty look, as if it had insulted her.
It's not gonna happen, so don't get any ideas,
she said aloud. She took the blood sword and also put it in her back strap, and with that final chore done, she bounced out of her room. Light had finally pierced through the sky as the sun began its ascent for the day. Serenity stepped outside of the castle doors to see her horse already saddled and Alexander's small accompanying army ready to leave. A strong arm reached around her and pulled her into a tight embrace.
Be safe, my daughter,
Jordan said as he smiled down at his glowing girl.
Thanks, Father, for letting me go. I'll bring you back a souvenir. I packed my satchel with some money so I won't be coming back empty-handed.
Serenity chirped with excitement.
You'll probably need another pack horse for the ride back home,
Jordan laughed. Serenity leaned up and gave her father a peck on his cheek and skipped over to her horse.
Bye, Father. See you soon.
Alexander walked out and stood by Jordan.
Could she have any more energy?
He groaned, rubbing the sleep out of his eyes.
Do you think she will be like this the whole trip? Yep.
Jordan laughed out, and the two of them smiled at the young woman who was acting like a small child. Alexander patted Jordan's shoulder and started walking down the steps, and turned slightly to look at Jordan.
Don't worry. I'll bring her back safely.
Jordan nodded his head and watched as they rode out of the castle grounds. A few hours later, a vast meadow of knee-high golden weeds danced in the light breeze. The sound of endless chatter filled the air, and at the edge of the field, Alexander's army began to make their entrance. Serenity was still within the kingdom of Ardalon, but was almost further than she had ever been before. She hopped off her horse and started running in the field. Alexander watched the silly young lady and cocked his eyebrow towards his head attendant, Leon.
Do you think she's going to run out of energy soon? No, sire,
Leon said with an exhausted sigh. Alexander looked over at Leon with a defeated smile. Leon wasn't a real tall man. He stood about 5'8" with broad shoulders, but a very thin physique. He wouldn't win at any arm wrestling matches, but his swordsmanship was something to marvel at. He was extremely nimble and fast, making striking him in combat extremely tough. He had even jumped over his enemies before, taking everyone by surprise. He would be a tough opponent for anyone, and Alexander was glad to have him by his side. He was Alexander's attendant, but he was also a good friend. The two often confided in each other, and Alexander trusted him.
I'll ride on ahead to the edge of the border, sire,
Leon said, and Alexander nodded in agreement. Alexander smiled at Serenity bounding through the weeds and rode over to her.
It's going to take us a couple of days to arrive. You might want to pace yourself.
Serenity smiled and twirled in the field. She reached her arms towards the sun above her head. She felt this overwhelming sense of freedom, and the new independence was thrilling.
Little Wren, we should probably talk about a few things,
Alexander said with a more serious look on his face. Serenity stopped and turned to face him as he slid off his horse.
Once we step outside the boundaries of Ardalon, I'm going to need you to stay close by my side. You'll need to try to mimic the other soldiers and stay in tow with them. That'll mean helmet on And maybe try deepening your tone of voice.
Hi, I'm Alex. I like to do manly things and say manly words. Ha 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 ha.
Serenity said in a deeper, mocking voice and smirked up at Alexander. Alexander smiled and walked up to Serenity. He looked down at his dear friend who was beaming up at him victoriously. He reached his hand up to her face and quickly smudged dirt all over it. Alexander let out a laugh.
There, that's better. Calm your little wren temper. The helmet isn't a full-face helmet, and we need to have your face better disguised.
What the heck ever? I could have easily done that myself. You did it for payback and for your own enjoyment.
Did I?
Alexander shrugged, putting on an innocent face.
I was just trying to help out my dearest friend with her disguise. Nothing more.
Alexander smirked and remounted his horse. Serenity smiled sweetly and also climbed on top of her horse.
Well, you know what they say. Payback is a bitch.
Hey, no fair. You already got me with the apple, so it was my payback. We're even.
Alexander pleaded.
Apple? I don't remember any apple thing.
Serenity grinned and kicked her horse into a soft gallop towards the field's end. Alexander rode off after her, and the two of them raced to the end of the field. In front of them was a forest with trees overhead creating a shaded dirt path. A small creek ran alongside it in the distance. Alexander pointed towards the creek and said,
We will take a short break there to water the horses.
This was big for Serenity. This was the farthest she had ever been. She walked her horse under the canopy of trees towards the creek. Adelon's border rested just a little ways ahead. She was nervous and excited. Her adventure had finally begun.